Hi, I'm Jess Cunningham, Australian sports and exercise physiotherapist and author of the book Pop, When Sports Brings Us to Our Knees. You're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to episode 346 of the Physical Performance Show, proudly brought to you by Polar's stunning new generation running watches, the Polar Pacer and the Polar Pacer Pro, and Say Sky's high-performance running apparel. I'm Brad Beer, sports and exercise physiotherapist by trade and training and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. We do this across a range of different episodes, interest editions, coaches' corners, learnings catch episodes, featured performers, and expert editions. And off the back of last week's expert edition, featuring assistant professor Patrick Wilson, sports nutrition scientist and author of The Athlete's Gut, we continue featuring the smarts of another author this week, and that is Jess Cunningham. By way of bio, Jess is an APA titled sports and exercise physiotherapist and author of recently released Pop, When Sports Brings Us to Our Knees, a book that chronicles the journeys of 13 Australian athletes who share around their ACL injury rehabilitation journeys. It's a book that aims to raise more questions than it answers, shining a unique lens on ACL injuries and their management. Pop reflects on the unique experiences of each of the featured athletes, with each athlete providing valuable insights and advice so that anyone working through their own ACL injury can learn from the successes as well as the mistakes that the athletes featured made in returning to their sport and life post-ACL rupture. As Jess states, the book aims to be a conversation starter, opening up the necessary dialogue between patients, surgeons and therapists to ensure that the best decisions are made with regard to ACL treatment and outcomes. Now, Jess's professional experience is extensive, having worked both in Australia and abroad with high-performance sport. Jess's clients have included numerous freestyle ski and snowboard Winter Olympians, X Games champions from Australia, New Zealand and the USA, Olympic sailors, professional footballers, alongside a host of recreational and aspiring athletes. So here is my conversation with Jess Cunningham, author of Pop, When Sport Brings Us to Our Knees. Jess, Lydia Lucilla, incidentally prior featured performer of the show several years ago, Olympic champion. Lydia's story is so interesting, outlining the tension between, I guess, traditional medical opinion and the gut feel of the athlete. Can you just bring us inside that story, paint a little bit more of a picture on Lydia's case study?
That gut feeling, a few of the other athletes, and I think all athletes, or anyone feels it, but maybe athletes are potentially better at listening into it. But yes, a lot of the stories, sort of the athletes knew something wasn't right. Lydia had the brace wasn't working for her at one point in time, and she knew it and she didn't like it, and she sought answers elsewhere. And in the end, knew her body well enough to go and find the answers that she needed to, that she wasn't getting from what was in front of her at that point in time.
You've touched on, and you're right about this in Pop, about the stories of the psychological burden of such a significant injury, such as an ACL injury, to the athlete or the individual. Can you outline a little around what you've observed over the years with your work on the front line there, with the impact that it does have on the psychology of the athlete. And obviously that goes without saying that we're not just talking about athletes, these are human beings.
Exactly. I think, again, whether athlete or not, across the board, anybody that does an ACL injury or any other big injury that takes you out from your sport or just the things that you love or makes you change the way you live, because you're going to have to rehab, and most people aren't rehabbing on a day-to-day basis. It changes your life. If you aren't able to play your sport and you're an athlete, that's where you get your happy hormones. That's what lights your brain up. So if it's a team sport, or even if it's not, but it plugs you into it's your life. So most of the athletes, all of the athletes, that they're talking quite candidly. Adam Gotsis' story is quite a good one about, he's very open about, he went into quite a dark place. But I think all of the athletes featured in the book, everybody ebbs and flows, and you definitely have your down days, and the importance of having support. So I've sort of tried to include, for each of them, some of them used formal supports, or had access to sports psychologists, or some did have access but chose not to use them. For others, it was maybe friends and family, whatever it was. Everybody's version of their support structure is different, but just how important it is to have that around you. And that's the power of this book too. It's almost like you've got 13 support structures in a way of, listening to other people and their stories. And there are lots of other, I guess, Instagram sort of things these days. It's much easier to get information out there and plug into stuff. And that's a great tool sometimes too. It's a bit like a mother's group, they put new mothers together because nobody quite understands what you're going through with a screaming newborn baby until you're actually doing it, and everyone else forgets when they've gone past it because it was so traumatic that you blocked it out. So, putting athletes that are injured together with other athletes that have gone through the same thing is, I think, really, really powerful. But if you don't have a group of athletes or a gym to train in, some of them have also talked about, if they're in a facility like the AIS or the VIS, how great it is to be around other athletes, maybe from different sports or maybe in their own sport that are going through a similar experience. And then Kim Green talks a lot about this as well, about how much better, and Cal Ferguson, they were at the end of it, as they matured as their players, of being a better support to other athletes in their teams who then injured themselves, that they had that better empathy and just awareness of what an injured athlete needs, and that all that support structure doesn't just crumble away and you're forgotten about once you've done your knee. Yeah, it's a huge thing. And again, if you're not an athlete, it's still a huge thing. It's a huge thing for anyone.
Whether you're athletic or pursuing sport or not, at any level, it's a threat. It's a threat to your well-being and your function and how you show up in the world. And I feel in many ways as practitioners, we're almost more counsellor-like than, physio is obviously, there's so many layers to that, but unless you can identify these psychological burdens, I think the effectiveness of the intervention's always much less. Yeah,
and we're also a huge support that's there because you're seeing them and touching base with them regularly. Obviously as they get on, that might get less frequent, but you need to keep tabs on all of those things. So you're a really important pillar in that support structure.
Before we move off the psychological aspect of injury, and in this specific case ACL injury, what would be your top tip to athletes out there regarding their psychology with their injury, and then also to practitioners treating the athletes? What would be your top tip to each of those groups?
I think for athletes in particular, and this is, I think we need to be careful, of our language with what we say around athletes, and particularly if you're working in, this is maybe at that very pointy end of high performance sport, of being careful. Again, Anna and Russ, historically, you would have thought, we never said that's it, your games are over. If you say that, that's very damaging, and then they believe that too. So, again, that's a pretty unique scenario. But I think, being careful of the language that you use around, which we should be all the time anyway, and just making sure that you're keeping tabs on people. How are you going? Just like a normal human being. And you're spending, what's the standard appointment time, around 30 minutes or so, but often if they're rehabbing with you, you're with them a lot longer than that. You're having conversation and you're having these relationships with them. So you can tell when things aren't going great, and whether you outsource, or do they just need to talk to you, or do they talk to someone else, or can you provide them with another resource like POP, or point them in the right direction of other people that could help them if you're not able to, or they need more than what you can provide.
Yeah, gosh, it's such a great point. And the power of education, however that occurs, whether it's an audible format, a written format, a conversation.
Everyone has a point of how they like to receive information too. So
Yeah, it's so true. But everyone likes bright and shiny books, Jess. So pop is going to be for everyone.
maybe.
It's been cited that circa up to 50% of all ACL injuries could be preventable. You touched on this. It's in section 3 of the book, Prevention Programs and Strategies. How can you summarize what we're seeing here and what's effective and what people could be aware of?
As clinicians or, health professionals, I think we should be, FIFA 11 is probably one of the older injury prevention program that's been around, but, there's now a lot more, and I've provided links to those in the back of the book that are, sports specific. There's the Activate program for rugby. There's the Prep to Play for AFL. There's the Perform Plus, Matt Whalen's great work. I always get that confused in my head, but I'm pretty sure I said that right, Matt, and the kids version of that too. So there's the knee program for netball that's come through, and they're all similar-ish when you look at it. It's a series of exercises that doesn't take all that long. They're just some conditioning, some strength stuff, some plyo stuff, some balance stuff. Apologies to all the researchers who have probably just gone, my God, there's so much more than what you've just said. But they're a little capsule of exercises that can be formed, and, some of Matt's research has shown they can be done, they don't have to be done at the end of training or the start of the training. Do it at home, just do it regularly. Lo and behold, training effect. People get stronger and better, and you can prevent these ACL injuries from happening. So if we could just get more, I think, again, as clinicians, we're sort of aware of those, but if you go into the general population and down at local club level, no one's doing it, not many. It would be great. A lot more could be doing it. And so I think if POP can achieve one thing, that would be great. Just start to implement put those exercises programs into the people that need to be doing them. That would be fantastic. It's only going to make you perform better. They're exercises. It's good for you.
Where do you think that breaks down, the translation of the evidence, the science into actual, like you say, observation of local club level? Where does it break down? What can be done better apart from POP being proliferated and creating conversation?
I'm not sure, but there's all that research that's going behind. These incredibly smart people doing PhDs on all of this stuff, and we know that it works, and that that the rates that it drops the injury risk down and it's not just for ACLs, it's all lower limb injuries is really significant. Like I think it's 50% reduction or so, and it's even more than that, up to 2/3 in females. So. But is it, what is it? They say 17 years that it takes for research to filter down into clinical practice. Is it that factor? Surely we can do better now we have social media and the power of information can get out much. Books are slow, a slow speed. Social media is pretty fast and powerful. Mainstream media, I don't know the answer, but I think if I was championing one thing with, what's the solution, it's probably that, from especially a physio point of view, make people a bit more aware that exists, and let's get those conversations going. And again, there's heaps of great work in and around that, but I think a lot more needs to be done.
You're listening to Jess Cunningham, author of POP, When Sport Brings Us to Our Knees, APA titled Sports and Exercise Physiotherapist. Support for today's show comes from Polar. Polar believe that the most important thing we can do is listen to our heart. What Polar does helps to improve the health, fitness and quality of millions of lives around the world, and that is what drives them. But what is driving you? If you are interested in the next step in your fitness and health tracking, do take a moment to check out polar.com. If you're looking for the latest in running watches, they have the all-new Pacer range. For multi-sport, it's the Vantage V2. Or if you're getting off the beaten track and need a premium outdoor GPS watch, look no further than the stunning and tough GridX Pro watches. However, if you want to get the most out of your training and racing, take a beat, grab the gold standard in heart rate monitors, the Polar H10. Or for an even more flexible heart rate monitor, the Verity Sense, which also tracks your heart rate for swimming. Polar's range starts at $129, but what's most important is that whatever you are doing, do it with heart. Polar.com. Support for today's show also comes from Say Sky. Founded in 2013 by CEO Lars Pedersen, a former pro windsurfer who decided to take the relaxed and fun attitude of that sport into the running world. This attitude, together with its focus on high performance and quality, has become Say Sky's mission in the high performance running apparel world at a time when the market was dulled by the giants in the running apparel industry. Say Sky's style is Scandinavian, metropolitan, minimalistic, with a penchant for urban colours. Their vision is to progress and elevate the apparel scene of running and to nurse a contemporary generation of athletes who are passionate and serious about their sport, yet all with a laid-back mindset. Say Sky likes to support up-and-coming athletes who they call everyday heroes, people who are juggling work, friends and family, but still make the time and dedicate themselves to training hard and having fun along the way. This is a mentality that Say Sky celebrates and something that their community is built on. Now, the team are generously offering up 15% off high-performance running apparel by using the code TPPS, all capitals, 15, over at saysky.us. For now, let's jump back with Jess Cunningham on this expert edition, sharing around her recently released publication, Pop When Sport Brings Us to Our Knees. Jess, it's been cited that females can be up to 6 times more likely to sustain an ACL injury or a tear than men. Any insight into why that may be the case?
Yeah, and I think the research, there's a lot of discussion in the last sort of little while about hormonal factors and the menstrual cycle. And again, all these conversations are so fantastic, but you're not going to put everybody on the pill, and the hormonal cycle is a natural thing. And there's no hard and fast evidence yet that you could apply across the board. So I think that that's not necessarily a helpful thing. It's still a bit, maybe something, but not something that we can necessarily fix, looking at it from that angle. Then you've got, obviously, females, our anatomy, our hips are a bit wider, where our biomechanics are a little bit different loads and forces around the knees. But again, not going to change the shape of my hips. So it's not, again, something that we can really focus on. But then there's that bigger topic, which I think comes back to this, that we can improve the training. And, historically, the football codes are a great example of this. They've only really just started in the last few years, and that's fantastic and it's so good. But each time the seasons start for AFLW, there's the casualties that come through for ACLs, and the media has a big, here it happens again, which, because it is happening. But fast forward however many years that's going to take. But, for the male counterparts, they've all been kicking footies around since they were however old to kick a footy around, and, could play club levels, and then, had Auskick, funneling them through. So they've had a lot more experience of all of those movement-specific training, better facilities, better exposure, better access, all of those kinds of things. And that's a bigger cultural gendered issue, which again is going to change in those codes. But if we can, then that gap between female professional sport versus male, if we can start to, again, just provide the girls with more of what the boys are getting, it'll be really interesting. And I suspect that those rates would change and drop. I don't know exactly how, or if anybody does know the answer just yet, but that'll be really interesting to watch over the next few years. But it's not going to do any harm to give a little bit more support for those for all of the sporting events. Give some great training in there, which sort of fits in with those injury prevention programs, like just prepare the athletes for what they need to do.
Wise words, Jess, and very practical. I'm going to put you under pressure here and see if Jess Cunningham can issue her top 3 tips to someone that's sustained an ACL injury. It's a broad question, I know, and it's not contextualised, but what would be the 3 top tips, Jess, for someone that's just recently incurred an ACL injury? Perhaps they're about to pick up POP.
Well, POP would obviously get yourself a copy of POP would be one of the tips, yep. Whether it's the first or the last. So we've got two to go, and it touched a little bit on this in the back of POP too, of get the right team of people around you. Usually that's going to be a sports physician or a doctor, probably a surgical opinion at least, and surgery if it goes down that route, and a physiotherapist, and probably towards the end stage, or ideally blending beautifully in there, even from earlier stages, strength and conditioning kind of coach. Some physios will have it just depends on what level you're trying to get back to, and that's another debate in there as well. But ideally, you'll have this lovely team. It might be less than that. Maybe you just have a physio and, someone in the medical team too, but just pick the people that work for you if you're able to, if you're privileged enough to have that choice and access to be able to do that, and or at least be able to ask them the questions, which again, there's a little bit of a cheat set of questions you should be able to ask and get some answers that satisfy you before you go down the path of whichever way your journey unfolds. That's two. Then I've got one more.
Get the right team around you, pick up a copy of Pop, and the third and final tip, Jess?
Stay positive. It's not the end of the world. You will get there. There's many that have gone there before you. And I usually tell my clients, whether athletes or not, that you will be, or particularly with the athletes, you'll be the best version physically of yourself you've ever been once you've completed your ACL rehab, because you have to stop, you have to address what's not working well in your body. You obviously have to get over the surgery or the injury at the start, but then you're going to do the most probably extensive rehab you've ever done. I think there was a great French study of alpine skiers that, the stats of after ACL, they were a lot more successful than a group that hadn't had it. So, it's obviously not ideal to do your ACL, that's for sure. So please don't do it in the first place. Prepare yourself well, but if you do, feel just bigger, better and stronger. Do that rehab really well to the end stages and carry on.
Stay positive.
Yeah.
Fantastic. 3 tips there, Jess. Every guest of the show issues listeners, Jess, with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Jess Cunningham's physical challenge going to be?
My physical challenge would be, it's sort of physical, but maybe it's a bit more mental. It's a bit both. But if you ever want to know if you get along with someone really well or not, buy a yacht and go sailing with them across an ocean. See how you go. I think it makes things in life pretty simple once you've succeeded or not in that.
How long did it take you to get across?
You do it. We went from Tahiti to Australia, and it's about 9 months. And you're going with the weather patterns, obviously, to miss the cyclone season. So. But yeah, simplifies things beautifully for you.
Well, that's unique. I don't think it'll be repeated on the show. That's amazing. And Jess, a broader question around physical performance, as opposed to just the topic of focus for this recording, which has been ACL injury, and that is, if you could boil everything you've learned through your extensive career to date into one piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their physical best, what is your top tip or piece of advice going to be, Jess?
Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself.
If you're not going to, nobody else will.
Wow. You have given us a lot to think about, Jess. Rich and powerful words. Amazing. Jess, Pop obviously is available wherever you can get books, but anywhere that you would send or direct anyone too that's interested in picking up a copy specifically? Good
old Google is, I think most people get their books online. So if you type in Google, you'll find it, whatever your favourite online bookseller is. If it's not in your library, ask them to get it. If it's not in your local bookstore, ask them to get it if you prefer to walk into a store. If you go to jesscunningham.com.au, there's all the links that could point you there too. So whichever way, but the internet's a wonderful thing that will usually steer you in the right direction.
Yep. We'll pop links up in the show notes as well, but yeah, it is easily found on Google. Pop book probably brings it up.
Pop ACL.
And Jess, one of the nice initiatives with the book is the contribution that book sales are making to Sporting Chances Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so the Sporting Chance Foundation, a good friend of mine, Andrew Duff, who we work together in winter sport, has started a foundation that helps aspiring Indigenous Australian athletes receive sports medical care when injured with sporting injuries. So 10% of the proceeds of each book sale will be going towards POP, but I think a bigger thing that we can do to contribute that to, particularly if you're listening to this as a healthcare provider or in any way, surgeon, sports physician, anyone that's involved in the rehab or care of ACL injuries or any sports medicine injury for that matter. It started with knees, I think, but now it's anything. Reach out to Andrew Duff. Again, maybe this can go sort of in the show notes at sportingchancefoundation.com.au and get in touch with Andrew Duff of offering your services to if there's an athlete in your area that could need or benefit from some rehab. If you're able to put your hand up and help out, that would be amazing.
What a terrific initiative, Jess, and we absolutely will pop all links in the show notes over at physicalperformanceshow.com. Jess, you're easily found as well, Jess Cunningham Physio over on Instagram. And thank you for stopping by, sharing a little bit about the what, how, and why of POP, and congratulations and thank you for the contribution you're making to the greater good of athletic care and, more importantly, human beings' well-being.
Oh, thank you. And hopefully, again, if it can just help one person through their ACL journey, then I think it's done its job. So I'd love to hear your feedback if you do get to read it. It's been received well so far. But again, just there to be a helpful resource. Hopefully it can be.
Yeah, well done. And thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust and I know that you enjoyed today's share-ins. Now do jump across to physicalperformanceshow.com, all the show notes, including links to Sporting Chance Foundation as Jess shared. You'll also find Jess Cunningham's website link there and links to the POP book available there as well. Of course, as Jess said, you can Google the book and readily get your hands on it. And it's something that I recommend for every practitioner's library working in musculoskeletal care, and certainly anyone that has sustained an ACL injury, it's an ideal resource as well. You'll find Jess over on Instagram, as mentioned, at Jess Cunningham Physio. Speaking about the socials, you'll find the show at Physical Performance Show. Keep the podsies coming. They are always a whole lot of fun. That's a screenshot of the episode that you're enjoying and tagging the show at Physical Performance Show. If you have any feedback about the show, how we can make it better, perhaps a guest recommendation, you'll find me over at Brad_Beer on the socials. Now, the show's available on YouTube now for full video episodes. Jump across the Physical Performance Show. And don't forget to hit subscribe. A massive thank you to the show patrons. Your practical support really helps this show continue. If you'd like to support production of the show, you can do so from just $5 per month. Simply jump across to Patreon and search for the Physical Performance Show. In return for your support, we'll grant you complimentary access to our back catalogue of live stream events, including live streams by acclaimed sports and exercise physiologist Dr. Stephen Seiler, sustainable training for attainable endurance goals, and durability and high-intensity repeatability in endurance training. The back catalogue also features Shona Halson, world-acclaimed recovery scientist, who presented a wonderful live stream on recovery essentials for optimal performance. More recently, Rory Darkins, positive sports psychology researcher, also shared a wonderful live stream, Cultivating Deep Wellbeing. So that's available for our patrons of the show. It's also available for on-demand access over at physicalperformanceshow.com. Huge thank you to today's show partners, Polar and Say Sky. Jump across to polar.com if you are looking for your next GPS smartwatch. The range is stunning. Likewise, if you're looking for some high-performance running apparel wear, jump across to saysky.us and enter the code TPPS15 for 15% off Say Sky's apparel. Big thank you to the team that make this show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, audio engineering, Susan Wilkins, show administration, Matthew Olding, show graphic design, and Milan Borrow, videography. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we will be featuring another Jess. This time, Jessica Orchard, Heart Foundation postdoctoral fellow and adjunct senior lecturer, and now associate editor of the British Journal of Sports Medicine. And Jess will be sharing around cardiac health for the endurance athlete. It's a must-listen-to expert edition, with Jess outlining the effects of endurance training on the heart, common cardiac issues for endurance athletes. Jess outlines who benefits from cardiac screening, whilst also outlining the known risks in taking part in endurance training. So until next week, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.